Hello everyone, welcome back to Spectrum, the first chapter, Divided Times How Literature Teaches Us to Understand the Other by Amanda Michalo Paulo. In the last class, I have given you an introduction to the chapter. Amanda is trying to read the old classics and find out how it can be relevant in our period. Today, literature has become an expression of the dominant or powerful class. It is in this scenario that we need anti heroes who question the dominant class. In ancient literature, there were many anti heroes. Now, let us try to explain the title, that is, Divided Times, how literature teaches us to understand the other. See, divided times means this is a description of our time, our era. We are now living in a world that is divided in every sense. We are divided on the basis of religion, caste, creed, gender, sexual identity, nation, etc. Okay, that is the meaning of divided times. Now, the other, you can see that the other is put within the inverted commas. Other means, here means an individual or group who is discriminated from the majority on account of various reasons like religion, caste, creed, gender, nation, sexual identity, etc. So the other means a person or a group who is not belonging to the majority and is moved to the or moved to the edges or sidelined on account of various reasons like this. So the meaning of the title is in these divided times how literature help us to understand the discriminated. So that is what the title means. Now let us move on to the first paragraph. Once upon a time there was a Greek, an Englishman, a German, and a Spaniard. They decided they would each write a story that would do its best to explain the human condition, the condition of human being. The Greek said, I am going to write about a man who is tossed about. Tossed about means thrown about on the seas after a war, and when he finally returns home, no one, not even his wife, recognizes him. See, this is in fact the Greek is actually the famous Greek writer Homer, and he is saying this. He is saying this about his famous work Odyssey. It is about a man called Odysseus who is thrown about the seas after the war, and when he finally returns his native place Ithaca, he is not recognized, not even by his wife. Okay, then the Englishman said, I am going to write about a young, indecisive prince who can't decide whether life is worth it. This Englishman is actually William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare is saying about Hamlet, a young, indecisive prince. Indecisive means a person who is not able to decide what to do, a person who is not able to decide whether his life is valuable or not. So, this is Hamlet. Then the Spaniard. Spaniard means a person from Spain. The Spaniard said, I am going to write about a prevaricating farmer. Prevaricating means an irresponsible farmer who believes he is a knight. Knight means knight is an ancient soldier. See, this is the image of a soldier of the medieval period, knight. So, An irresponsible farmer who believes that he is a knight and sets out on his rickety horse for a series of madcap adventures. Rickety means a very lean horse, and this person is in search of a series of madcap adventures. Madcap means mad and amusing adventures. This is actually a reference about the famous Spanish work called Don Quixote. In English, it seems like Quixote, Don Quixote. It is pronounced as Don Quixote. Then the German writer is actually Goethe. The Spanish writer is Cervantes. The German writer is Goethe. The German said, I am going to write about a young man who falls passionately in love with someone else's wife and dies of love in the end. So this paragraph tells about four writers. One is Greek, one is an Englishman, one is a Spaniard, another one a German. These are actually famous writers. Uh, Homer, William Shakespeare, Goethe, Cervantes, and you can see the images of these writers. Then how this is how it is explained. Homer, who tells the story of a man who is to thrown to sea after the war. When he returns home, nobody, even his wife, recognizes him. Shakespeare tells about the story of a prince who cannot take decisions at the right time, who cannot decide the value of his life. Cervantes telling the story of an irresponsible farmer who thinks that he is a knight and search for mad and amusing adventures. Then Goethe about a young man who falls in love with somebody else's wife. So, what is the Hamlet, Don Quixote, and Sorrows of Young Werther? That is the name of the last work, Sorrows of Young Werther. It is said that this particular work, Sorrows of Young Werther, opened, which served as a beginning for the romantic movement in European literature. So, moving on to the next para. If we look at things schematically means diagrammatically or quite systematically, that is more or less how Homer created the epic Odyssey, that is, then Shakespeare the drama, Cervantes the novel of the wanderlust. Wanderlust means lust for traveling, while Goethe cultivated the soil of romanticism. So, through the previous paragraph, the author was actually trying to say this. This is how the four writers, Homer, Shakespeare, Cervantes, and Goethe, wrote their famous works. It could be a joke, but it is the history of European literature. So, this four of these works can be taken as reflecting the history of European literature. And the strange thing is, these characters, after whom every modern and postmodern narrative follows, are themselves deeply modern, marginalized anti-heroes. So there is a common factor uh, that is present in all these characters. That these characters, though they belong to very ancient works, these characters are deeply modern, contemporary. They are marginalized anti-heroes. Marginalized means ignored, avoided, uh, margin moved to the margin, marginalized anti-heroes. They are not heroes but anti-heroes who are not having heroic characters. Today we recognize them and meet them in the light of their popularity, their interpretations, and in distortions. But who are they really? What do the people around them think of them? And what do they think of themselves? What image does literature give us about the dreams and quests of European ancestors? So now we will move on to the explanation of it. See, there is a common factor, as I have told you. There is a common factor in all these stories. Though written in ancient periods, these characters are deeply modern. They are anti-heroes who are marginalized. These characters are analyzed and studied even today in every modern and postmodern context. Even today, stories and films are being made about these characters. These stories are very popular. They are interpreted again and again. Their stories are even distorted. Still, let us ask, who are they? Who are these characters actually? How people in these stories think about these heroes? See, this is a very interesting question. How people in these stories think about these heroes? What does these characters think about themselves? So, in answering these questions, you will be able to understand how these characters are relevant even today. See, all these stories are coming from Europe. Now think, what idea does these characters give us about the dreams and aspirations of Europeans of that time and their ancestors? So Amanda is trying to say that if you analyze the characters in these famous works, you will be able to understand the dreams and aspirations of Europeans at that time. These characters represent what Europe was at that time, and it can be said, it can be seen that these characters are even relevant today. That is the reason why um, they are still these stories are being told, films are being made about these characters, etc. And now coming to para 3, let us take Odysseus as an example. Before he reaches Ithaca, he washes up on the island of the Phaeacians, naked and in despair. He resembles the contemporary refugees who have been arriving on the shores of Greece. In the eyes of Nausicaa and her companions, he seems terrifying. This is the description. Like some hill kept lion who advances, though he is rained on and blown by the wind, and both eyes kindle. He goes out after the cattle or sheep, or it may be deer in the wilderness, and his belly is urgent upon him to get inside of a close steading and go for the sheep flocks. So Odysseus was ready to face young girls. Urgency. What a prophetic word. Prophetic means something that is able to foresee the future. Urgency. How contemporary it sounds today in the light of the refugee crisis. Even mythical Odysseus can only assume his position as hero once he has washed and put on his clothes. See, this paragraph describes about Odysseus and his similarity with the modern refugees. When the princess of the Phaeacian island, Nausicaa, and her companions see Odysseus, he was a very wild man. He looked like a hill kept lion. He was open to rain and wind. His eyes were like burning like fire, and his belly is urgent. It is. This means that he was very hungry. This hunger exists even today. That is why it is said that urgency. What a prophetic word! It foresees future, and how contemporary it sounds today in the light of refugee crisis. So let us read the explanation. Just take the case of Odysseus. Before reaching his native land, Ithaca, he reaches the island of Phaeacians. He was utterly disappointed and was naked. Why this figure is still relevant. The reason is that this figure of Odysseus is similar to the figure of contemporary refugees who have been arriving on the shores of Greece. Nausicaa was the princess of Phaeacia. In the eyes of Nausicaa and her friends, Odysseus looked like a wild man. He resembled a lion seen in the hills. His eyes shone like fire. He was open to rain and wind. He hunted cattle or sheep or deer. His belly is urgent upon him. He was hungry. It was in this condition he saw the young girls in the island. Amanda says that the usage of the word urgent is very contemporary. It reflects the condition of the refugees today, even if the mythical character Odysseus goes through the condition of not even the mythical character Odysseus goes through the condition of a refugee. He is not a hero now. He will only be hero again when he reaches Ithaca, washes himself and put on clean clothes. So through this perspective, Amanda says that this ancient work is a classic. It still it is still capable of reflecting contemporary reality. This is how a literary work help us to understand the other. Here, the contemporary refugee. So that is it. We have gone through three paragraphs, first three paragraphs, and we will continue in the next class. Thank you.